Listen, it's so important, and I talked about this on the last podcast, to really check in on your people and then also find the time to check in on yourself. Your mental health is important, man, because earlier this week, man, an ex-NFL player killed 5 people in South Carolina, including himself. Just to break down, say former NFL player Phillip fatally shot 5 people, including a prominent doctor, his wife, and their 2 grandchildren, before later killing himself, the authorities said. This all happened on Thursday. Say York County Sheriff told news conference on Thursday, investigators have not determined the motive of the mass shooting. But look, man, NFL players, and for a while, CTE has been a real thing. You know, a lot of guys are faking CTE, as they say, quote unquote. I'm not going with that narrative, and I'm not sponsoring that narrative, right? But there's a lot of guys that are really going through it, and these are guys that we deem to be, rich and at the top. You know what I mean? And like I explained last podcast, and we continue this narrative. This podcast is about transparency and growth. We want to make sure we building people up and not tearing people down on this podcast. But at the same token, man, we have to take the time out, y'all, to really focus on our mental health, man. Mental health doesn't mean you have a weakness, man. Mental health doesn't necessarily mean you have a problem. But mental health, it means when you realize it and you can check in on yourself, that means you need some sort of help. So this man takes out a doctor, his wife, you know, their 2 grandchildren. One grandchildren was 9, and the other grandchild was 5. So it's just to show, man. So the player, he had a 45 and a 9mm handgun that he used to kill them. See, Adams here. Here's the thing, man. He had been treated by the doctor. He had lived near his parents' home in Rock Hill, according to a person who was briefed about the investigation, who spoke on conditions of anonymity, because you really don't. Anonymity means you just don't have the authority to be talking in person, so you can't really put your face behind it. You can speak without a face. They don't want people to know exactly that you're the one that snitching. You snitching on folks. Excuse me, man. I'm recording pretty late. After this podcast, I want to make sure I'm able to take my ass to sleep. So I'm consuming fruit. That's going to give me the energy and the vibe to really vibe to you guys. But I think this is alarming, man. Because it just adds to the narrative, man, that, it's so important that the folks that we vote in office really put an effort in working on this mental health piece, man, because it's bad. You hear it, man. I was listening to CNN last week as well, and the sheriff in New York was talking about the hate crime with the Asians and whatnot, and he said the reason that the mental health really dies off because it's not enough people putting their name behind it. It's not enough people like harking and yelling about it. He said in the moment when things happen, folks are really raising their voice and they're really saying that, okay, we need to change this, we need to change that, we need to do this, and we need to do that. But as time goes past, the voices tend to dwindle, and the support behind the situation tends to die. I'm just one guy, man. And in most cases, I'm not really that important to most. I'm not really important enough to really get the message out. But that's why I rely on the people that enjoy the podcast and really support the podcast. Because when you hear things that you like, that's why I ask you to share. Sharing, I really feel when I watch the podcast and I review it that I'm doing my best to put out the best episode each time that I possibly can and give y'all the best energy that I possibly can, and also make sure I'm being transparent and giving you my energy. You know what I mean? So. But again, man, this guy played 78 games in the NFL over 6 seasons with 6 teams. He joined the 49ers in 2010 as a 7th-round draft pick out of South Carolina State. He rarely started. He played for New England, Seattle, Oakland, New York Jets, and the Falcons. So the Falcons was his last team in 2015. He says as a rookie, man, he suffered a severe ankle injury that required surgery and includes several screws during the insert of his leg. He never played for the 49ers again. They released him in 2001. He later signed with the Ravens. And here's the thing, man, he had 2 concussions over 3 games in 2012. So over 3 games, he had concussions. I've had multiple concussions before just playing football, not on their level, but just on a small time level. So I know the impact of a concussion. I had one major concussion to the point where I just was playing street football that it required me to sit down for 10 minutes, take a breath, and really get back in the game and do my thing. And I'm telling you, I promise you, I'm not making no money to do that. So I understand if you over time the repeat blunts of force to the head and you're not really treating it properly and you're not really paying attention to it. Because in most cases, I think as an NFL player, and I'm not an NFL player, so I'm only giving my opinion. Guys are working for a living, right? They got a lot of situations they really have to take care of. In most cases, they got to do what they got to do. So in most cases, they will lie or they will, fabricate the truth, and I think that leads to issues down the road. Um, they say whether he suffered long-lasting concussion-related injuries wasn't immediately clear. So Adams would have not been eligible for testing as part of the broad settlement between the league and former players over such injuries because he hadn't retired by 2014. So he didn't retire until after 2015. So he wouldn't have had an opportunity to really join that little settlement and be tested to see if he had any reminiscence of CTE or whatever test they take as far as for concussions. Um, but man, look, it's still sad, man, altogether, man. Families lost. It's clear, he had an issue with that particular family because, like I said in the beginning of the piece, and I'm reading off of NFL Network, NFL.com, ESPN, and whatnot. Said in the beginning he was treated by his doctor, so it was something that his mind told him that he didn't feel right about from that situation. So yeah.